Now, Scott, I know you've recently returned from Russia. I was just in the land of the EU, as I'm calling it. I was in several countries just on a vacation, but I got to see exactly from at least a limited perspective what's been going on in Europe. But I want to hear about your experience in Russia. I know that you were doing a tour of your book, Disarmament in the Time of Perestroika, Arms Control in the End of the Soviet Union, which everyone should pick up on Clarity Press. But yeah, tell us about your experience. How was it going to Russia? Whatever you would like to kind of highlight, because Russia at this time is kind of a mysterious and dangerous place, given all of the noise from the U.S. foreign policy establishment, NATO, etc.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to lie. It was the concept of traveling to Russia. You know, it was interesting to contemplate. First of all, I honestly thought that my government would stop me, that they would prevent me from getting on the airplane. And so I was pleasantly shocked when I was allowed to board, and we were flying from Istanbul to Novosibirsk, which was our initial port of entry. Not too many Americans, not too many foreigners come into Novosibirsk as their initial point of entry. Most people come in through, Moscow, maybe St. Petersburg, maybe Sochi. Novosibirsk is sort of deep into the hinterlands of Siberia, but that was the home city of my host, the Alexander Zirionov, the man who was my sponsor. And so that's where we flew, and that was interesting in its own right. I think the Russian customs and border guard people who do passport control were shocked to see American passports slid across the under their window to them. In fact, they were so shocked they said, "Time out, go sit down. We got to refer this to higher headquarters." And they sorted out. We had the right visas, and the authorities knew that we were coming, and so we were eventually put in. But it just goes to show that the strangeness aspect was a two-way street, because not too many Americans travel to Russia at this point in time. The purpose of the visit, as you said, was to promote the Russian edition of my book. It was published by Komsomolskaya Pravda, one of the largest and most respected publishing houses in Russia. And they did a fantastic job in getting this book to print. I think they printed 15,000 copies to start with, and from my understanding is they all sold that quick. So yay for that. And look, Komsomolskaya Pravda's motivation in helping support this tour was to sell books, and so that, of course, played an important part of what I did. But the mechanism of selling the book consisted of doing shows like this, to go on to Russian shows and talk about disarmament, talk about the book, talk about current affairs. In each city I went, I did a sort of a town hall type meeting. They were originally supposed to be quite large, and there was a lot of interest. I'm not bragging. I'm just saying that there's a lot of interest in Russia for what I have to say, and had the opportunity been permitted to go forward, we could have easily have filled venues with 1,000, 5,000 people. The decision, however, was made from a security perspective to not do that. Shortly before I was supposed to arrive in Russia, a Russian war blogger nicknamed Tatarsky was assassinated by Ukrainian intelligence, and he is on a death list known as the Mirtvorets list. I'm on that list, and the Ukrainian government has heightened my profile in terms of their condemnation of what I've been saying about the conflict in Ukraine. And so there was concern that if they advertised venues well in advance, that this could become a target for people who wish to do me harm, but more importantly, forget me, hurt innocent people who were coming to hear what I had to say. I mean, you don't want to create the conditions where hundreds, thousands of people's lives could be in put at risk. And so one of the things that happened is that the announcement of my talks was withheld until the last moment, and there was extremely tight security around it. So I didn't get to address the massive crowds, but the crowds that I did address were people who wanted to be there, people who were interested in what I had to say, people who challenged me, some very interesting questions, very poignant questions on questions on the market. And so I had this wonderful opportunity to interact with the people. But the other part of the journey was my own journey to learn more about Russia, you see, because this isn't just about promoting a book. I mean, that's, of course, what made this trip possible. But to give this trip meaning, beyond simply marketing, I felt that it was imperative that I go to Russia, see firsthand what Russia's about, and try and do my best to capture the essence of Russia and bring it back to America so that I could better explain to Americans who haven't had the opportunity to go to Russia the reality of Russia. Some people might think it's corny, but the way I describe what I'm trying to capture, this essence, is the Russian soul. It's a concept that I didn't invent. Russian writers have been talking about the Russian soul for centuries now. Dostoevsky, Tolstoy, Lermontov, they all speak about the Russian soul in one way or another. And the Russians themselves speak about the soul. It's an important part of who they are, what they are. And here I am, an American, and I'm trying to go, well, what is the Russian soul? How would you describe it? What does it encompass? And what's the meaning of it? And what does it, what's the ramifications of this Russian soul? And that was a journey I went on, and I took it seriously. I had unique opportunities to see Russian culture, Russian history, and the Russian people, the Russian nature. Part of my trip was what I call the planes, trains, and automobile aspect of it, meaning that we did a lot of flying. We took a lot of trains, and we drove a lot. So I got to see every aspect of Russian transport. The report card that I'll put back on Russia is the following, and this may shock a lot of Americans. Sanctions aren't working. In fact, let me just put it the other way. The sanctions are making Russia stronger. The Russian economy today is the strongest economy in the history of the Russian Federation. That's not Scott Ritter saying. I mean, that was my observation. But, Russia just held something called the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. And Vladimir Putin spoke there and gave a report card, which he said the exact same thing. The Russian economy is doing A-OK. It's growing. It's the strongest, most vibrant, most dynamic economy in the history of Russia. And it's the reason for this is because of Russia's compelled response to the sanctions that the United States and Europe have put in place. Russia has beat the sanctions. Russia is moving on. They don't care about the West anymore. They don't need the West anymore. They don't want the West anymore, and they're thriving. Every city, and I come from the United States. You're here, Danny. You heard about the Build Back Better plan. Joe Biden's big infrastructure plan, and what it was going to do, the miracles that it was going to perform in America. New bridges, new roads, new everything. We're going to redo America. Big home improvement project. Well, it hasn't happened. And it's not going to happen because we can't afford it. Let me tell you who's doing Build Back Better: the Russians. Every city I went to, there are massive construction projects. Why? Because thanks to sanctions, the oligarch-driven system of developing the Russian economy, where you would make business opportunities, make money, and then have that money leave Russia, is over. No money's fleeing Russia right now because Russia's been sanctioned. They can't take their money out. But they're still making money. Where's it going? It's being reinvested back into Russia. And this means that city planners who used to have tight budgets, just like any American city planner, go talk to anybody, whether it's a small town like where I come from, Bethlehem, New York, or the city of Albany, state capital, but still a small state, or go to New York City. Every city planning session has the following problem. Too many hands reaching out saying, I need money, I have projects I want to do. Not enough money. There's not enough money to go around. Well, in Russia, that's not the problem. Problem is they got money and they don't have enough people to do the projects. They are literally calling people up and saying, hey, I know you didn't bid on this, but you guys mind coming down? We have about 300 million rubles we need to spend on something, and we'd like you to come in and tell us what you think you can do. And that's happening right now. Foreign investment, domestic investment, there's just construction taking place. Now, if people think that I'm trying to paint a picture of a utopia, I'm not. Russia, like any country, has its problems. First of all, Russia's still digging itself out of the hole that was dug by Boris Yeltsin and the collective West in the 1990s. There are ramifications of that disastrous period that resonate to this day. One of the problems also is that Russia, like any large country, has bureaucracies, and some bureaucracies are more efficient than others. And some bureaucracies, especially when you deal with energy-based income and things of that nature, there is a level of corruption. So let's not pretend that there is no corruption in Russia, that everything is perfect, that everybody operates perfectly. There are many problems in Russia. Let's just be straight up about that. And the Russians will tell you the same thing. Yeah, we got problems, but Russia's working. They're trying to solve the problems that they do have. They have solved many of the problems that did exist, and Russia is functioning. Russia is moving forward. They have some friction holding them back, but they're going to overcome those problems. And thanks to sanctions, we've made it easier for Russia to begin to overcome those problems. The other thing, too, is because of this war, patriotism is taking hold in Russia. Russians have always been patriotic. There's always been this love of Mother Russia, but I would say that while people supported Putin, and he had majority support, I can't say that there was overwhelming enthusiasm for Putin. It was more like, all right, yeah, Vladimir Putin is doing an okay job. We're not unhappy that he's there. The majority of Russians, a lot of Russians saying, we don't like the guy. We'd like to see someone else. Because of this war, what's happening is the people that didn't like Vladimir Putin, they left. And the Russians are like, bon voyage, good riddance. We don't need you. We don't want you. Have a good day. And the Russians that remain are focused on defending Russia. And you defend Russia any number of ways. It's not just about going to the front lines. It's about serving Russia at home and serving Russia efficiently. And so a lot of the problems that existed, bureaucratic inertia, corruption, are being self-solved by people who suddenly woke up and went, you know what? I'm done with being corrupt for the time being. I'm actually going to run a clean business. First of all, because the government's insisting I do, but second of all, because I want to, because I want to be efficient, because my inefficiency is hurting Russia in the face of this collective threat. So the more these sanctions go on, the more we prolong the conflict. And, the conflict is prolonged every time Congress allocates billions of dollars to the Ukrainian government to keep their system function, to keep their military in the field. The stronger Russia gets. Russia today is stronger economically. Russia is stronger politically. Russia is stronger militarily. This war has not weakened Russia. Russia's military has expanded from 900,000 to 1.5 million. It's probably bigger than that because of a very large volunteer contingent that's fighting in the special military operation. Russian defense industry is churning along at full speed, all cylinders going, without detrimentally impacting their civilian industry. This isn't as though Russia hit the switch and went straight over to World War II type military only production. They have a vibrant civilian economy. They're building cars, they're building everything, and they're building a lot of weapons, and they're doing it very efficiently, better than the collective West does. Russia is stronger today than it has ever been, and it's getting stronger. Now that's, I guess, from the perspective of the West, that's bad news, because we ain't going to win. We're not going to beat them. Now let me give you the good news. The Russians don't hate us. The Russians actually want to be our friends. The Russians are desperate to find a solution. And when I say desperate, I don't mean pathetic desperation. What I'm saying is the desperation of good people who want good things to happen for everybody. They don't wish the American people harm. They wish the American people prosperity, and they desire friendship with the American people if the American people are serious about it. The day of the Russians bending over backwards to appease the West is over. Russia's moving on, but what the Russians are saying is, hey, if you want to come in and join us, we're happy to have you. We'll be your friends. We don't have, and this is the amazing thing for all the stuff that we've done against them, all the harm we've caused. Because I have to tell you, as an American, if a nation, we saw it here, Danny. We know, you know what I'm talking about. After 9/11, are you telling me there were no hard feelings in the American public towards Muslims, towards Muslim nations? I mean, you saw how we went off and started holding to account people who had nothing to do with the attack. Hell, we went to war against Iraq that had nothing to do with 9/11 because we hold grudges. We're prejudiced. We're ignorant. And the Muslims that we turned our ire against hadn't done anything to us, but we still turned on them. Here's the Russians with the United States of America saying we seek the strategic defeat of Russia. That means the end of Russia as we know it. We are engaged in supplying a Ukrainian government that is problematic in every sense of the word. Banderist supporting, neo Nazi leaning, non democratic government. And we're providing them with weapons that kill Russians. You know, Vladimir Putin, in his presentation at the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, spoke of a casualty ratio right now in this current counteroffensive, which I'm sure we'll talk about soon, of 10 to 1. That is, for every 10 dead Ukrainians, there's one dead Russian. And on the one hand, you're sitting there going, wow, that's a massacre. But think about it. A figure I heard today from a very responsible source is that the Ukrainians have suffered 13,000 dead so far. That's 1,300 Russian dead. 1,300 Russian dead. That's a lot of widows. That's a lot of moms burying their sons. That's a lot of sons and daughters missing their fathers. That's a lot of families whose lives are forever ruined by this conflict. And while I can't speak for those individuals, what I can say as a nation is that if this was us and we were burying 1,300 Americans because of actions taken by the Russian government, supported by the Russian people, there'd be a lot of hatred here in America towards Russia. We'd have reason to hate them. There's no hatred in Russia. None. I didn't experience any hatred. There's some dislike. People are strongly disliking, but they dislike the policy. They dislike the government. But the feeling towards the American people is surprisingly benevolent, surprisingly warm. And that's the good news, is no matter what we've done, no matter the sins that we have committed collectively against Russia, and we have committed many sins, the Russian people there's enough heart in there to forgive what we've done and to be willing to work with us to move forward. And that's the only hope we have right now, is that the Russian people will find it in their hearts when this war is over, and this war will end, and we will not win. They will. They will not be the kind of victor America is, a vindictive victor. We hold people to account. The Russians aren't going to be that. The Russians are going to be a good neighbor, a good citizen, a good global citizen. And that's the one redeeming feature of this entire disaster that's taking place, is that there is an off-ramp. There is hope for the future, but it's only because of the quality of the Russian people and, frankly speaking, the maturity of the Russian government. This is what I saw when I went to Russia.
Incredible to hear that. I was in Europe for 3 weeks. I happened to be in Brussels, and the land of the EU, so to speak, and it was just, you can see the decline. I mean, you can see it in your pocketbook real quick, because everywhere you go. I was in Germany as well. The prices are ridiculous. You can see the infrastructure crumbling. Even these like wonderful trains, which we live in the United States, so there's very little of the kind of trains you even see in Europe. But even their trains, they're breaking down. They're stopping. They're throwing people off the trains, telling you, "Oh, sorry, you're not going to get to your location. Figure it out." There's no workers because they're cutting everything back. And I'm wondering, Scott, before we get into the conflict itself, What does Russia think about what's going on? I mean, what did people you spoke to in Russia think about what's happening in the U.S. and Europe? Because it seems like, as you said, Russia is rising, it's growing, it's strengthening. And on the other hand, those very countries, the NATO countries, the EU, the United States, that are waging this proxy war, they are suffering pretty dire consequences. It's quite obvious. I mean, the prices in Germany just out of this world. I was in Prague in Czech Republic. The prices, no one can live there. I don't know how anyone lives there given the wages and how inflation has decimated. And then you see Ukraine flags everywhere. Everywhere. It was just maddening. Everywhere you go, Ukraine flag, all the businesses are changing their like brands and their signs to put the Ukraine. It was really sickening to see. But I'm wondering what did people you spoke to think about what's happening in the U.S. and Europe?
Well, let me start by saying this. The United States has imposed, together with Europe, massive sanctions on Russia. And the purpose of that was deliberately to bring harm to the Russian people, to bring about economic collapse, to cause people to lose their jobs, their livelihood, to cause Russian infrastructure to crumble, to cause problems. And had that happened, Americans would be high fiving themselves. Oh yeah, man, we did it. We made the ruble rubble, baby. We brought down the Russian. High five. Let's get a beer. Hey, America's great. We made the Russians feel pain. Aren't we good people? Um, so now, the Russians didn't start off to bring pain to Europe or to the United States. It's never been their objective. But because of the sanctions boomeranging back on Europe and the United States, there are problems. And I will tell you this. Not every Russian. I mean, all Russians are upset about this. They're not happy about this. I mean, some of them are like, well, you brought it on yourselves. We didn't want this, but you brought it on yourselves. We're sorry this is happening to you. Some Russians cry. They feel bad about this. Not they don't feel guilty about it, but these are people that are so damn human, that when they hear about what's happened, they get emotional. They feel pain. They have empathy. They have sympathy. These are just damn good people. Damn good people. There's no Russian doing a jig, gloating over the fact that the Germans are paying high energy prices, that German workers are losing their jobs, that Americans are getting punished at the pump, etc. I didn't meet a single Russian who was like, "Oh yeah, baby, the Americans are feeling the pain. We're happy." None of that. I'm not saying that doesn't exist. I'm sure somewhere in Russia there's people that dance a jig when they hear that America feels pain. And yeah, be honest, I can't blame them. But every Russian I met, maybe because they were meeting an American and they didn't want to display maybe their true, but I always felt that they're very open. The one thing I'll tell you about the Russians is they're an open damn book. Now, that book will stay closed for the longest time because they're a little reticent and all that stuff. But when they decide to sit down and get to know you, that book comes open. And they're like flipping through all the pages. This is who I am. This is who we are. So the Russians that I dealt with, they came down and they opened up the book, and people cried about what's happening here. They were sorry. They were emotional. They didn't want it to happen. They don't want it to happen. This is just the God's honest truth. The Russians are not gloating over pain being brought. And one of the reasons why is that the Russians know pain. You see, in America, now you and I know we have people that know pain. Look at the army of homeless that exists in this country. Look at everybody who's living paycheck to paycheck. I was trying to explain to the Russians. I said, you guys think that I'm an American and I'm wealthy, and I can show you a photograph of my house, and you see two cars in the driveway, and you're like, wow, you're doing good. And I'm like, wow, I'm not doing good. I am 2 missed paychecks away from losing everything. Everything. The bank will take my house. The bank will take my cars because I'm paying car payments. I'm paying the house. I'm in debt up to here, as every American is. And I am 2 missed paychecks away, sometimes only 1 missed paycheck away from losing everything. This is stressful being American. Health insurance. If you're lucky enough to have an employer that provides it, it's literally the premiums are doubling every year. And what you're getting for this doubling is less. They reduce the benefits, they double the premiums. But imagine somebody who bought into Obamacare. You can't afford Obamacare. because Obamacare requires you to have $5,000 to $10,000 in the bank to pay if you get hospitalized to make that payment, because otherwise you couldn't afford the payment for Obamacare to get the platinum program. Can't afford it. Most people end up buying minimum level, which means that they have deductibles that they can't afford if they actually get sick. That's the reality of America. Student debt up the yin yang, all debt up the yin yang. And so people are under the perception that, everything's easy here. It ain't easy here. It's hard in America. It's hard to be an American to sustain what we have. But the Russians, when they learn about this, they're shocked. They're like, wait a minute. What about all this prosperity? I said, it's artificial. We're in a consumer society where we fake ourselves out by continuing to buy. But most of the time when we continue to buy, we accrue more debt. So that puts more pressure on us. And then to feel better about it, we have to go out and buy that next Xbox, or I guess it's called an Xbox still, the PS5. Is it a PS5? I don't know, because I don't do it, but my daughter does. So, you got to keep up with the Joneses. You got to get the new, iPhone, whatever. But again, to get it, you go more in debt, which means that paycheck issue becomes a bigger paycheck issue. I'm not saying the Russians don't have economic difficulties. They do, but they don't live under the constant fear of losing their home, losing their jobs, losing health care, being unable to go to school, because that's not how Russia works. It's a pretty good place to live. I'm not going to go live there because I'm an American. I belong here in America. My job is to fix my country. I love my country. But I'm honest enough to say that the quality of life in Russia is decent. It's getting better. And it goes beyond simple consumer-driven things. See, Americans tend to judge quality of life by what we own, what we've acquired. Russians judge quality of life by quality of life, meaning, can I go out with my friends? Can I take a vacation? Can I just stroll the streets and look at, go through a park without worrying about being mugged? Go to a museum and enjoy the history. That's quality of life for the Russians. And most Americans don't have that because we're working long hours. We come home, we eat, we go to bed, we get up, we go back, we work long hours. That's our life. So the quality is what we can get, what we can buy based upon that labor to give us, cheap thrills or whatever. But we don't take the time to actually stop and smell the roses, as that old country and western song went. The Russians do. The Russians smell the roses every single day.
Thank you for tuning in to my latest video. I appreciate all of your support. This channel, however, needs your help. I am seeking to make this channel more sustainable in the long term and upgrade necessary equipment to ensure that this work continues onward and makes progress to give you all of the geopolitical analysis that you all deserve. For that reason, I'm asking you to become a member of my Patreon community at patreon.com/DannyDhaiphong. You can find that link in the video description or in the pinned comment below. For whatever amount you choose to give, just know you are supporting independent media that you can't find anywhere else. Thank you so much, and I look forward to the next video.